It's the incomparable, indisputably idiosyncratic Undress Show. Yes, I say the Wednesday night Undress Show. Find us on porn sites across Europe and North America. It's where milk-drinking people go to confirm their private thoughts and opinions. So here we are again, fresh from boring presidential debates that have taught us about bigotry and not much else. We wait with bated breath for the middle of November, when we will hear the real conspiracy theory of why our preferred candidate had the election stolen from them by the Russians or the North Koreans. Yet we're still here in Conroy's Pub and Emporium, where little changes over the millennia. The seats that tear your arse from those infamous steak fries that have some secret ingredient that we're addicted to, and where, if you wait long enough, you can catch anything your heart desires. Let me gently introduce our panel for tonight's debate. The magic Dr. Orlando.
Yo.
The indefatigable Kathleen Taylor.
Milk drinking?
The legendary Tyler Durden.
JT, what's good?
What's up? The Dark Lord of Transylvanian Pheromones, Ivo Ivanov. And guesting tonight, straight from the army, Chris Magerkurth.
Hello.
Yes, and without further ado, the first question for our panel. The panel represents the final generation to have experienced a world before the internet, possibly even cell phones. Has the internet and the cell phone brought us together, or in fact has it pushed us further apart? Let's start with Tyler.
Unfortunately, I would actually say it's both, because to some extent it's pushed us apart because your cell phone makes you very self-absorbed, and the internet has also made us somewhat self-absorbed by, examples like Facebook, and everybody just posts about themselves and what they think and their thoughts and what have you.
That's not true. Everybody I see is posting about Trump right now.
Or about Trump.
I've never posted about Trump.
Or lying Hillary.
Well, the other thing, though, about the internet and what have you, bringing us all together, to an extent, I would say that is actually true, because you look at things like terrorist networks and how they can now band together worldwide because of things like the internet. Whereas before the internet, the communication level that they had was just archaic. It was nothing like we have now. And so I would say it's actually both.
Yeah, that was my thought as well, that it's a little bit of both. It brings us together because, I never would have had the resurgence of my love of Dungeons & Dragons had I not, been able to listen to Will Wheaton's podcast and then the D&D podcast and then find a group to play with down in Wichita, Kansas, and now I'm playing up here in Kansas City with, relatives and friends. But it also tears us apart because it allows us to kind of find our own little niche groups, this group over here and this group over there, and sort of keeps us, in our own little worlds.
So you're at home, but you're playing with people in different cities.
Yeah, I Skype with a group down in Wichita every alternate Saturdays, and then Thursdays now we have a guy in Pennsylvania, and another guy is Manhattan, Lewis. That's
In Manhattan, Pennsylvania, and then we may have a couple guys, or at least one guy that Skypes in from here in Lawrence.
Kathleen.
And I've made the acquaintances of several very nice Nigerian princes. We are very good friends now.
Well, I'll say, okay, I have a couple questions. Do you guys think that there was the same kind of plus and minus when, like, the Gutenberg press? Because I really think of the internet as the next level of communication, or essentially disseminating ideas. So when we got to the point where everybody could read, do you think, or everybody had access to books is more accurate, I think, to say, do you think that there was an equivalent effect on society? Do you think people thought, now that everybody's got all these goddamn books, people aren't getting along anymore?
Well, it wasn't until, correct me, teachers, if I'm wrong, but it wasn't until the mid-1800s that lots of people could read.
Right. Well, and this is actually kind of where I'm curious about the question, because I for sure don't have an answer to the question that I'm asking you guys, but it's something that I think about all the time. I question whether or not the internet is going to be seen 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now as a good or bad thing. And I think that we all think that at a certain point, like advances in communication are good, and advances in the way that we maintain our knowledge is good. It's good that we were able to go from pencil and paper to a computer disk to hold our documents, I think.
Well,
It's brought a lot of parts of the world into contact with the rest of the world that wouldn't have had that chance otherwise. But in our own first world, or whatever you call it, Western civilization,
Right.
I'm beginning to think that the internet and access constantly with cell phones and so on are simply exaggerating characteristics that people already had.
Right.
If you were a stuck-up so-and-so, blah, 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 now you're even more so because you're on your cell phone ignoring people just blatantly.
And you're connected to more, stuck-up so-and-sos.
Yeah.
And reinforce and feedback that loop. And
Uh-huh.
And to add to your idea, Kath, I think the internet, to an extent, even just technology as a whole, it moves so quickly. It moves faster than our species can evolve to it. And I think the internet, it has so much potential to be a good, positive thing. Unfortunately, I don't think our species was ready to make it so.
Our species no species evolves that fast.
No,
It's
doesn't.
not possible.
We honestly, we were not ready for the internet.
are we ready for what comes next?
What comes next?
Yeah.
I think 360-degree, like holographic pornography is kind of where things are moving to.
Dreaming
I
again.
say-
That'll
I
be the
say
end of
this-
society right there.
There's two things I would say. You said about history. Someone said about, I wonder where we'll be in six.
Right.
I would love to be able to put a time capsule in that says, students, when you were told that the internet started on the 3rd of December 1987, it's wrong. It was actually the 15th of January 1986, right? From someone in that time.
Right.
But the other thing I was thinking after you had been on my radio show, Dr. Orlando, the other day, we were talking about hacking and we were talking about passwords and so on. Are we going to get to a time when we're going to go back to snail mail for security? The IRS, for example, do not email people. And I'm wondering whether or not there's going to come a point where if I want you to have some information about me, for some reason I want it to happen, right? Whether or not a really efficient mail system, snail mail system, whether
Isn't
the post
mail-
office, for example, if they could get same-day delivery, or something like that, and I have no idea whether they could do it because of the unions and 101 other things, but whether or not, if there was some specialized mail delivery thing, then it would be completely secure. The hackers could not
It's called
Could not hack it.
FedEx.
I think it's very possible. Absolutely.
Well, you'd still have a problem. There'd still be people who could pay somebody off to intercept your letter. There'd still be ways for people to get it. If somebody wants to break into your house, they're going to find out a way to do it. It doesn't really matter what security you implement. Somebody, if they want to get in, they're going to get in.
But they don't actually know you're sending a letter. That's my point.
Well, they don't have to know that you're sending the letter. All they have to do is look for your
courier.
your courier or your return address to show up in the mail's computer system saying that we got a letter that's
But
coming
in
from
But
here.
it eliminates the
Kathleen.
massive different hacking.
It'll make it harder. Yeah,
Well,
'cause
yeah.
you got to physically
You'd have
go
to
there. You
actually
can't just-
target somebody, and you couldn't hijack shiploads of mail time and time again and not have anybody notice it.
But in 1985, we opened a big office and we knew that there were a lot of private telephone calls being made by the staff. And so we put in a computer printer that would print out every single outgoing telephone call. And the cost of those telephones, it just finished pretty much. And
What do
we
you mean
get-
when you say it finished? Do you mean that the
calls stopped.
Gotcha. Uh-huh.
We said, look, if you need to call your spouse or your partner or something about the kids or something, no problem. But don't be spending hours and hours on our telephones, But I didn't get a mobile phone in my car until summer 1987. Summer 1987 I got that phone. And I didn't start using email until about, 1997. So say, call it 10 years later. So actually, I've been using email for about 20 years, haven't I? Pretty much.
Let's call it 20.
20 years.
As long as I've been using it.
Yeah. But is there going to come a point when we use email for stuff like writing a note to ourselves, where it doesn't matter who sees it, but secure stuff will be snail mail, or
I
some
think
virtue
we're
of that?
already there. I think that there are already things that we don't trust to. I'm sorry. There are things that we shouldn't be trusting to digital communication, for precisely the reasons that you are discussing. I've noticed a tendency, and I don't know if it has always been this way, but I'm noticing now in the gangster movies, whenever there's whoever the lead boss in the gang is, or the mob, or however you want to say it, he doesn't talk to anybody except his inner circle. So he never has access, or anybody that has not proven their loyalty to him has zero access to him. We're talking about it, and I've seen this in the movies.
That's like Jeremy,
100 times, where he's at a family function and there's not even members, outside of his nuclear family that are allowed to talk to him. There has to be a go-between between him and the rest of the world.
Yeah, that's pretty much standard procedure, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's standard procedure. I don't know if it's just that we are aware of it now because of how inherently insecure the internet is, that it has raised our global consciousness about security, so that it makes sense now that when you're watching a gangster movie, that the head gangster is one step away from everybody else, or if it has always been that way. I just simply don't know.
It's always been like that. You have a consigliere.
That's something.
Giving away secrets.
Evo.
What's going on?
Well, we want to know. We want to know. We've come to the conclusion, or I'm coming rapidly to the conclusion, that the internet is so insecure now that we are going to revert to snail mail. We're going to go back to.
I'm thinking actually telegrams.
Telegrams were good.
Oh, yeah.
Telegrams were good. Morse code, telegrams. Hey, yeah, it is insecure, isn't it? There's nothing is safe on the internet.
Well, nothing, and not just including the internet, nothing is 100% secure. But we have consciously made the decision to
sacrifice security for convenience.
That's exactly it.
Yes.
So we could actually make the internet securer and make it as slow as standard mail.
I have an interesting question that is slightly philosophical. Do you think the internet will actually make us better human beings because we'll be afraid to do nefarious things because they will be much easier exposed?
No.
How about listen to this?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think a million times before I say anything on the internet. Before, you could say something and then think about it. Now you have to think 100 times before you actually put something in writing. And I feel it big time because I write on a regular basis for media. And I am so worried every time because once you put something in print, it's there for eternity. And it can be scrutinized, it can be analyzed, it can be fact-checked a million times. So
it can be misinterpreted.
So in a way, that has made me slightly maybe better because I'm worried. I'm worried. I'm checking myself.
But I have two words that counteract that example.
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
I was going to say that.
No, seriously. There is a quality to your character that means that how the world perceives you is important to you.
Yes.
That it is important that you be seen as an upright, as a moral, as a
You mean Donald wouldn't have that?
I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't want to talk about Donald yet because I think we're going to talk about him later. But I think that as a whole, there are people that are concerned with what they would consider to be more concrete results.
Yeah.
How do I get the most money that I possibly can? Oh, I can hop online and steal money, and there's a chance that I might not get caught. Well, that's what I'm going to do. And
But that
There's
and,
tools
and
online to make yourself anonymous and try to hide your tracks.
yeah,
Anonymity and internet are the worst combination imaginable because
It doesn't exist.
yeah, but well,
Really?
in the comment section, it's very puzzling. You can write something on the internet about. You can say something like, "Well, the weather was really nice yesterday," and the fourth or fifth comment underneath would be, "The Jews are responsible for everything, every evil in the world."
and have you
You
noticed
know?
we now have
Yeah.
a real world counterpart to that anonymity? Mm-hmm. The clown epidemic that we
Oh,
have right
Lord.
now.
Yeah.
Oh,
no, don't
gosh.
get me started.
That is
Literally,
weird.
we've
I
got-
still
no,
think it's a viral campaign for the the movie
They've
It
already
that's
come out and
coming.
said that's not true.
It's
No,
not true.
honestly,
No,
I-
it's a
I-
Trump campaign. They're all orange.
No, I really think that what you just said, Evo, is that that the ability to not have to identify yourself makes it
Yes.
very easy to become a troll. To
Yes.
basically say something mean-spirited in order to get the reaction that you're going to get, and that's what you're seeing with the people that are dressing up like clowns and standing in dark areas for no other reason than to scare people.
Yeah, it's devastating thought, but what's even more devastating is I missed Jeremy's introduction because I was late. So can you please go ahead
It
and do
had
it
a
again?
lot of big words in it. It was good, except that there was something
We-
about milk drinking.
Yeah, which
I-
is going
I
to get
didn't get that.
repeated every week now. Milk drinking is part of it.
Yeah.
In fact, Tyler wasn't here. Who was here? That's right. Young Alec was here last week with us. The last show we were talking about milk. And he was very
no.
embarrassed. We have on our panel a very successful and truly international best-selling author who is literally mobbed in his home country.
Who is that? That's not
yet,
me.
yet with the loss of 2 national book-selling chains and the closing of many second-hand bookstores, is he a dinosaur? Dr. Orlando.
Are you asking if the
No.
books are the way of the dodo?
No, I don't think so. In fact, I just read an article yesterday that talked about secondhand bookstores having a resurgence in the last 2 years, that they've actually made more money in the last 2 years than would offset the money that they lost in the previous 4 or 5. So I don't think that books are dying.
But did that include internet secondhand bookstores, or because physical ones are dying?
Physical ones are dying except for the ones that aren't, and the ones that aren't are proliferating right now.
Well, what we're dealing though is that what Jeremy is asking is to take a bigger picture and not just observe the micro trend
Right.
that there's secondhand bookstores right now, but to look at the macro trend. Where is society moving in general when it comes to books? I mean, are libraries flourishing? Physical books that, for us, obviously, it has huge nostalgic value having the volume and the weight of a book in your
were just
hands.
talking about that.
Yeah. And so, but I don't know about the next generation who really are not used to paper and ink. How important it's going to be for them? For them, really, probably the iPads would be a nostalgia thing. They'll be like, "Oh my gosh, remember way back when we had iPads? Now we
had
have
to
everything
carry around
downloaded."
a little screen.
Downloaded in our heads. I think it's more enticing to read an actual long book like East of Eden or War and Peace if you actually have the book. Our attention span has shrunk so much that it's almost become impossible to read classics anymore.
But that
And-
big tome by that well-known Bulgarian author, Ivo Ivanov, which is very thick and is 600 pages,
Yeah.
has, 100 stories in it? How many stories has it got?
Well, it has 73 stories.
73 stories.
Yeah.
Now,
But you
here's
said
my...
you wrote the whole thing in one sentence.
Yeah, you said that.
I have one story that's in one sentence.
But
That's
all right,
I think
so
it's- that's
70
fascinating.
stories, right? And each story is 4 or 5 pages, 10 pages, something like that.
longer, yeah.
A little bit long, whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can get through a story
Yeah.
and put it down and move on to something else.
Yes.
They're saying that people today have very short attention spans.
Yes.
Kids,
Yes.
that generation that are coming up, even the generation 2025, they don't read. People say, I don't read.
Yeah.
They don't.
And they're
because
not
they don't.
embarrassed about it.
Because their attention span, you hit on it, their attention span is I read a text on my phone. That's my attention span.
Yes.
My attention
I
span.
don't agree
Tweet.
with the attention span thing. In the past, you'd read a book and you'd get into a fantastic book, and you would live in that world for a while.
Yes.
And quite a while.
Yes.
Today, what about Game of Thrones? People get into a world that's in a series. They can binge watch it. They will get into it. They have the attention span there at some point.
How quickly
But
does
it's
it-
visual,
But how quickly,
not reading.
How quickly does a frame move while you're watching that? Is one scene on for 4 seconds, or 8 seconds, or 20 seconds? How quickly does the frame move? That's where you see attention span changing a lot.
And you know, Game of Thrones is an interesting example. It's a valuable example because Game of Thrones is in a way a giant book that's tailored to the new generation because it has 1,000 storylines and 1,000 characters, jumps from one to another to another to another to another. But is it possible to read Anna Karenina with one contemplative, long storyline with like 5 major characters and just going through this entire vast, voluptuous storyline without getting lost and drawing conclusions from it and thinking philosophically and contemplating? Is it possible nowadays? I don't know.
See, I think that we're all like way too old to be considering this as a question.
Speak for yourself, man.
I feel
You
like
had a birthday.
I just had a birthday, dude.
Yeah.
No,
Birthday.
I honestly,
It's your
I
birthday.
think that we are doing the youth a tremendous disservice to say that they're not reading. You talk about books. The Game of Thrones book that we're talking about right now, the first one was maybe 400 or 500 pages.
Sure, but it was short bursts of information moving to the next one.
But there
But
are,
still.
I mean, there are very successful books,
Yeah.
and Harry Potter is a classic
Harry
example.
Potter is another example. The books are literally getting bigger. You literally have to work out to carry around Harry Potter Volume 7.
One of my cousins just updated a post on Facebook asking for recommendations to fill out her library, and she was asking for hard physical books, not
Yeah.
what do I need to add to my iPad. She was wanting books to put on the shelf.
Yeah,
And
but
there's
she's
study after
an-
study that's coming out right
Right,
now
and
that's saying kids prefer books.
I think
Are books cool?
I think that's a micro trend, and
My cousin Isaac
I'm
thinks they're
afraid
cool.
I'm
He's
afraid
three, but-
cool.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's a micro trend, and I don't see libraries in new homes that are built. You can watch any television home show. There's a lot of them. The Property Brothers, all of these shows, and you go from model home to renovated home, and it was very funny. The last time I saw a book in those homes was to make a prop.
Really?
Yes.
Table.
No,
Serious?
Yeah.
without
You mean they
question
didn't
agree
have the
with that.
bookshelves on the boards across the cement blocks the
Yeah,
way
use them as a
most of us
decoration.
used in our
That's
younger
usually
years?
the first thing I look at somebody's home is, what's their record collection and what's their book collection.
Yeah, libraries are turning more and more into a place where people go to the internet. And if you go into the
Those internet cafes.
yes, and if you go to the KU, fantastic KU library, and you go into the library, you'll see a thick layer of dust covering the books, and it's kind of sad.
Oh,
it's kind of sad
dear.
because
Talking of books, do we reread them, or do we use them for fiction or non-fiction? So I can say, to give you an example, for me, I have a Kindle. If I'm wanting to read fiction, I'll download it onto the Kindle. If I'm wanting to research stuff for a lecture or something like that, then I buy the book, and I'm afraid I have to say that I usually buy the book secondhand off Amazon.
I had a girlfriend named Kendall, like maybe 20 years ago. We did a lot of downloading.
So, Jeremy, do you have a book that you reread? Is there a book that you go to? Even though, because there's constantly books coming out, there's constantly new stuff that you can read. But I, for sure,
Do you mean a fiction book?
I
or-
don't. It doesn't necessarily have to
Yeah,
be.
I
fiction.
have a few favorite books. I have one, for example, that I discovered when I was at boarding school. So say I was 14 or
They
something
had
like
books
that.
back then.
And I managed to get.
He went
I
on his
managed,
horse to
I
the
managed to
library.
get
Is that a
my
school you
hands
learn about
on
boards?
one, and it was a book about torpedo boats, believe it or not, and it was written by one of the commanding officers. So it was about his life, and it I used to go and get lost, as Kathleen said. I would get lost in this. I could smell the fuel and, everything else. You don't get to hear. You can talk about, I don't know, some war movie, right? And they're all in the bomber, and what was it? Nola Gay or no? What was the one about the flying fortress, the last flying fortress? And the one I mean.
Blank stares around the table.
Stares.
Yes.
There was a war?
Brad Pitt, has been in a whole load of these type of movies.
Mm-hmm.
What they don't tell you is he was in one, wasn't he? The Monuments Men, right? And there's a lot to deal with a particular Sherman tank. Now, what they don't tell you is when you stick your head inside a Sherman tank, you remove it quickly because of the smell of petrol and puke, right? Bombers
Sounds
use
like
the
Conroy's.
smell of puke. You don't get that unless you're reading what I call faction,
Right.
which is a cross between fact and fiction. That's,
What we would call fiction.
Or historical fiction.
yeah, historical fiction. But I like that sort of stuff, and so I have, as my wife will attest, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books. I don't know how many.
I attest.
books I've got.
I attest.
Yes, but
To
is there
answer your
one?
question, I think that the idea that as far as what do people buy now, they're more likely to actually buy a book of fiction versus nonfiction. Because nonfiction, I can just go online and I can just go on YouTube and figure out how to do this. I can just type in, how do I change the plunger or how do I change the drain on this, and boom, it just
No,
shows
I
me.
don't do that.
Well,
See,
what do you
fiction-
call Trump's books? Are they fiction or nonfiction?
They're friction.
I walked into
I call that firewood.
in one of the
That's what I
bookshops.
call it.
In one of the bookshops that is closing down or has just closed down in our town, big one, Hastings, part of a national chain. I wandered in there because they were and I discovered a book about my great-great-grandfather's cousin, right, in America. I'm English. This was about the
that's
goings-on in his life between the First War and the Second War. And, I mean, where did that come from? And I still think there are books that you can go and sit and read and dip into. I like that, particularly on a wet Saturday afternoon. It's like some people like to watch the telly.
I'm not going to comment on that.
I like to do a book. So,
For me,
Dr. Orlando, I was going to come back to you. What do you like to read? Do you like to read fiction, faction, or
Friction.
Or friction?
Fiction with
I
friction.
am
50 Shades of Grey.
in a transitional phase. I think I am becoming more. I think I'm developing a stronger affinity for nonfiction, but I do have a couple of fiction books that I come back to at least once a year. At least once a year, I will read just a couple of books that, at this point, I can easily say I've read 200 times.
Agreed.
One being Frank Herbert's Dune. I can read that book
Oh yeah.
pretty much
Yeah.
at least once a year with no problem. One of them, actually, I haven't read it in a couple of years, but I used to read the Brothers Karamazov at least once a year. There's also a book by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett called Good Omens.
Oh,
that
yeah.
I read. That one I might actually read like every 6 months. I just love the book, and
Great book.
it just takes me to a fun, happy place. And if I sit here and think, there's probably 3 or 4 more that, quite honestly, I will walk by the books on my shelf, because I actually do have it's not actually a library. My books are all in my living room. And I walk by my bookshelf and
Or just hold up
see
the
that
furniture,
book
and
say, I need to read that. And
Yeah.
take it off the shelf and start reading again.
Yeah, I agree. There's some books physically, you look at a book and it talks to you, like books that you've read in the past.
Dude, that
they're
sounds
old
scary.
friends. Yeah, well, it's like the necro. What was the from Evil
Necromancer.
Dead?
Yes, the
Chris.
Necronomicon.
Yeah, I haven't reread a lot of books, but I read both fiction and nonfiction, and I have lots of books that I keep up. My favorites, though, are the ones that I read back in junior high.
Such as?
Oh, the Fafhrd and Grey Mouser series from Fritz Lieber. What's another good one from that time frame? Oh, I've all the original Star Wars, the one that was written just before or just after the novelization. That who was it that wrote that one? I can't remember that one.
Yeah.
Kathleen, have you got what are your favourites?
Well, I have one favorite author that it seems like nobody's ever heard of, and Dorothy Dunnett, who writes historical fiction set in Scotland and England. And weirdly enough, when we came to Lawrence to buy a house, we walked into the house that we now have, and on the bookshelves were the entire set of Dorothy Dunnett books.
Wow, that's awesome.
And they said she was in Kansas City giving a talk last year, and I missed that. Yes. No. So
Dorothy Dunnett, but you will get into a book. It is said by Kathleen's daughter that if she gets into a book and someone sets off an atomic weapon, she wouldn't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's me.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's a good book, absolutely.
Yeah, it's an immersive experience. That's the best thing.
Ivo, we haven't got something from you. Leaving aside your own writings, what
it will take me months. This topic, I can talk for hours, but yeah, I like fiction. I mean, I got involved with writing when I was maybe 7 years old. As soon as I discovered this thing called letters that you can arrange into words and words into sentences, I've discovered you can construct entire worlds, and the only limit that you have is your imagination. I fell in love with storytelling, with books, and I can go back. I was obsessed with Jules Verne when I was young. There's a book called Mysterious Island. I don't know how many times I've read it. Arthur Conan Doyle when I was young. I love Pippi Longstocking, Astrid Lindgren. Incredible character, just incredible flesh and blood, amazing character, incredible
Roald Dahl.
book. Winnie the Pooh is an incredible. The Little Prince. Going back to my childhood, my favorite book of all time is East of Eden. I already mentioned it. That book is about everything in life. You can find everything. You can find a lot of very provoking ideas in this book. And the words Tim Shell, you know what Tim Shell means. It's like it's a reoccurring theme in the book, and I keep it with me. This conclusion from the book, Tim Shell, and I always say, Tim Shell, you can do anything in life. So it's just an endless topic. I love the American authors. The Kurt Vonnegut, I was lucky enough to meet him, and that was incredible.
You hit on a very good point, though,
Yeah.
a second ago, as far as whether or not books are actually going to come back or not.
Yeah.
And we've all actually kind of talked about this for a second, but you hit on a good point that you talked about, from your childhood, and you said this as well, from your childhood, there's these books.
Yes.
There's some, and I have one of those as well. We all do.
Which is?
For me, honestly, it's Lord of the Rings.
Right.
The whole, not the 3 separate books, but like the whole compilation.
Yeah.
But to have that and to actually see that on my bookshelf, there is a nostalgia factor that
Yes.
I will never get rid of that book. I will never, and I will read that book every single year, kind of like what Lou was talking about. I'll read that book again and again and again.
My copies
Because
are
I can
falling
just
apart.
see it.
There's
I can
familiar
hold it in my
pages.
hand.
There's familiar pages.
And that's something that I will never get rid of, because that book helped shape my childhood and helped shaped me as I grew.
What about I've not found any here in America. Well, I've lived in America over the last 10 years, but I used to love going to book fairs in England.
Yeah.
And where you would go into a hall and there would be book dealers, 50 or 100 book dealers, and they would you could buy the most amazing books.
Yes.
Does that do anything for anybody here on the panel?
Yeah, and in fact, in Bulgaria, we are a very bizarre country of obsessive readers. The country has always been obsessed with literature, and it's amazing right now the proliferation of bookstores in Bulgaria. But what's really cool is in the middle of the city we have this square called Slaveykov Square. It's a plaza, and this place has been for many, many decades a place where people sell books on the street. It's really amazing.
Saw the same thing in Rome when and I were in Italy this year.
Yeah.
Where not just it wasn't a dedicated spot, but it was just these stands.
Yes, they
off
open
the side. They roll them up, and they're just filled with books.
Yeah, they open up the stands every morning, and they sell books, and people are buying books like crazy. And these are second-hand books. They're a little bit higher priced because they're tough to find, and so it's really amazing. And it's amazing how popular this place is. It's kind of the heart of the city, and people can't imagine. There's fancy bookstores everywhere, but people can't imagine the city without the Slaveykov Square where they sell those books. It's a beautiful thing. I always, when I take people with me, I always take them to this place. Louis has been there, and we actually stayed there not far from that place. So it's a really magical thing.
I have to ask, can we buy your book in the square? Can you buy your
you
books?
can. In fact, you know what was very interesting? I went looking for a book written by Lance Armstrong. It's not about the bike, My Journey Back to Life. This is a very, think what you want about Lance, but this is a book about him surviving cancer. And there's no better present for somebody that you love that has cancer than that book. It's
I will actually
considered.
agree with you on that because I've read that book as well. And in that frame, yes.
Yeah, it's a Bible for cancer patients. And unfortunately, I had a friend who's dealing with very serious cancer, so I was desperately looking for his book. But because he's been disgraced, it's impossible to find. It's out of print. No, so that was the only place where I was able to find. And when I went there, the guy recognized me that was selling the book and asked me if I can give him my old book because it was out of print, and said a lot of people are looking for your book, and do you have one copy to sell me? So that was a very bizarre, absurd situation.
So that's what paid for your holiday. Okay, let's move on to something a little bit, perhaps a bit more serious, which I find fascinating as a Brit. It seems that once anointed by their respective parties, presidential nominees can do no wrong. On the Hillary Clinton scandal front, we have email, Benghazi, Whitewater, Clinton charities, along with allegations of racism, of being an enabler for a cheating husband, of cheating at the primaries, and of bad fashion taste. Hillary's, of course, pale by comparison to Trump's scandals. For example, no tax payments for 20 years, 3 or more bankruptcies, maybe 6, demeaning the Gold Star family, bad-mouthing Senator McCain for being shot down over Vietnam and spending 5 or 6 years as a prisoner of war. Very close to Putin, the Russian leader, going after Hillary because of Bill when he's on his 3rd wife. Hillary didn't cheat on Bill. Bill cheated on her, denigrating a federal judge because he's Mexican, and of course Donald's contempt for women. I have 3 or 4 questions really for the panel, and we'll work our way through them. The first question is, do Americans actually care what the nominees say or do?
Well, they do care what they say because, Trump says he's going to do this or Hillary says they're going to do this. So that's really kind of all they listen to. They don't really give any details of how they're going to accomplish it. They're just going to say, I'm going to make America great again, or, we'll lift up the American worker. And that's really slogans. All they care about. It's all about, this is my message, this is what I'm going to do, and that's sort of all they focus on. And all these flaws and the actual meat of what it means to run the country, they don't care.
That's true in on one side. It's not true on the other side because there is a total double standard.
How do you mean?
I mean that Hillary Clinton's ideas and so on are examined. Trump's are not. His supporters will hear him say something that they don't like and say, well, he doesn't mean it.
Yeah, nothing sticks
and they
to
don't
him.
care that he doesn't mean it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. They don't care what he says, whether he means it or not.
Yeah.
What he says makes no difference to them.
It's the magic of setting an extremely low standard.
Yeah.
No. I agree with the end result, but I don't think it's accurate to say that they don't examine what he says. I think that I think that Trump supporters examine what Trump says, but because it is empty, they can fill the lack of substance with what they want.
So they disregard the bits of it that they don't like, and only listen to the parts they do like. And different parts, some of them, listen to different parts.
Well, I think that dynamic is universal. I think that we all discount the parts of our candidate that we don't like.
That's a good point.
We have to. I think that because we have a 2-party system, there's no other choice than to.
It's a one-party system. It's the party of money, and that's all that matters.
That's a good point.
No. But I think that we essentially have a finite number of choices, and because we have a finite number of choices, we have to pick the thing that fits us best out of those two choices.
You
I think-
basically pick the lesser of two evils.
I'm not willing to say that
Or
it's
the
the lesser
greater
of two
evil.
evils,
proclivities.
because I think that is
Don't agree.
that sentiment is what's used to lower Hillary Clinton to the same level as Donald Trump. To say that you're picking Hillary over Donald is to say you're picking the lesser of the two evils for some people, especially for the people that are not Hillary fans. But if you're going to vote for Hillary, it is a case of voting for the lesser of two evils. And it should not be that. It should really be the case of voting for a public servant versus whatever adjective you want to put in there for Donald Trump. Yeah. So, in many cases, I think that saying lesser of two evils is apt, but that is specifically because of what you said, Kath, about the double standard. And there's whether or not you want to accept it or acknowledge it, there is this double standard for women. Hillary Clinton is, without question, interrogated more so than Donald Trump.
So. We've talked about it just how sexist our society is. Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, she can lose a debate by not smiling enough.
Yep, absolutely.
Trump can't.
Her makeup is wrong.
again,
or her hair is wrong.
Yeah.
Or she doesn't dress correctly.
No. But
Yeah.
to be fair, to argue that on the other side, I would say that is exactly the reason that Tim Kaine is viewed as having lost the vice president debate, because he didn't do those things. It's why Gore was viewed as having lost the debate against Bush, because he didn't do those things. It's not those things that typify how she is treated as a double standard, but it is the fact that she is held to a much higher accountability
Absolutely.
to what she says than the person that she's literally fighting right now against a documented liar that nobody in the news will speak up and say, this guy, I'm sorry, there are a couple of news outlets right now that will say Donald Trump is a known, liar.
Misogynist and liar.
I
Serial
have
liar,
to say, I
yeah.
want to go to Tyler, but even Fox News is having difficulties with Trump.
Right.
That
And
says a
the
lot.
difference between, I think, Pence and Trump is that Pence
He's not
was
insane.
gratuitously unpleasant last night,
But
whereas
he won. He
Yes.
scored
but
major
sure,
points.
sure,
But not being Trump.
but he had been
Yeah, but
he had been briefed on how to handle Kane, which was
Right.
keep talking whatever happens.
yeah,
I've
he
been
wouldn't shut
there.
up.
I
He
know.
had sentences that went on for minutes.
That's called
But it
training
worked.
monkeys.
No, but it
Yeah.
worked.
Exactly.
It worked,
It
but the measure of how successful that debate was is going to be in the ads that follow.
Right.
So
Right.
that's to
and,
come.
and let's come to Tyler, and then we'll wind up this, and we'll go on to the next question.
Well, I mean, Lou, we kind of talk about this idea of picking the lesser of two evils.
Right.
And you kind of hit on this idea that here in our system, yes, there are other presidential candidates. Can you
They don't
all,
count.
can you name who they are? Panel, can you name the...
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Jill
Yeah.
Stein
Jill Stein,
and
Gary
Johnson.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you mean the
Yeah.
guy who doesn't know
So-
where Aleppo is?
So
There's another two, I think, but I can't remember who they
exactly.
are.
So there are actually another two, but no one who knows who they are, including myself. I don't know. But basically, as
One's me.
allegedly this democratic society that we live in, we only have a choice of two people. Because, what was mentioned earlier, the idea of money, our system is flawed. I mean, I don't necessarily want to vote for either one of these people. Maybe I want to vote for someone different, maybe. Maybe I want to fill in none of the above as my vote.
It would be awesome to have
If I can actually do that, and actually
yeah.
then all of a sudden I have to get good qualified candidates, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it works here.
Let's move on to the next part of this question, and again, for me being a Brit, looking at the way the Americans do their elections, the question is this actually the first reality TV presidential election?
I'm actually going to say
Is
no.
it a reality show?
No, I'm
No.
going to say, well, no, I think it is, but I think that we discovered in the Nixon versus Kennedy
Yeah, I was gonna say
debates that it's always been.
What about Palin? I mean,
Well, no, I think it goes back to the first
The
television
first televised
debate.
debate was, the first time television got into politics, it became reality television. It
Style
became,
over substance.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Marshall McLuhan was saying years and years ago.
Kathleen.
Well, just to go on a little slightly different aspect of this, the whole thing could be fixed if you change the voting system. Get
how
rid
would
of
you change
A,
it?
the Electoral College, and B, instead of just voting for whoever gets the most votes in a state is going to win that whole state, get in a system where you do preference voting.
How do you mean?
Well, list the candidates you've got a preference
You
for.
had to ask, didn't you?
And,
I wanna know.
And if your first preference is the person at the bottom of the list, you get your second preference, and that gets onto the vote total. In the end, the person elected has the support of over 50% of the people
You vote for
voting.
1, 2, and 3, and then
Right.
it works its
Called
way
proportional
out.
representation.
Yeah.
I agree with you there. I also think that this idea of whole reality TV presidential, it'd be gone if somehow you put rules upon the moderator. If the moderator actually did their job and made candidates answer damn questions. Here's what I want to know. How are you going to do this? And then they actually had to tell you how they're going to do this, because us as voters, that's what I really want to know. I don't want to know about some beauty queen. I don't want to know
Yeah.
about your husband did this. I don't care about any of that. What is your plan to make this happen? As
So-
a voter, that's what I want to know. I
So
wanna-
should she be able to cut off somebody's
no,
microphone?
but hang on.
No,
I think that should be that should happen.
Honestly, yes. I think the moderator, in my opinion, the moderator should be able to say, "You're not answering the question. Stop.
That's
Answer
not-
the question."
that's
Eva,
not
let
a
me,
solution.
let me get to
Microphone off.
Eva.
Yeah.
Person looks stupid waving their hands around.
Let me get to Eva. What about giving the moderator a whistle?
That's not a solution. The solution, guys, it's so simple. Think about it.
Guns?
No, no, you guys, come on.
Guns.
It's right there. You know the solution. You know, you just can't verbalize it right now. It's very simple. Electrocution. Every time you interrupt, you're sitting on a
That gets
chair.
stronger.
You're sitting on a
Stronger
chair.
and stronger and stronger. Can you imagine Trump's
Every
hair
time you
eventually
inter-
standing
Yes.
straight up?
Yes.
That- I would
yes.
It would be
see
out
that.
like a
And
foot and a
that's
half.
messed up.
Absolutely.
Hillary's judged for her smile, her clothes.
Her
Yet
jokes?
Trump is not judged for his hair. Are you serious? Or his orange Oompa Loompa face?
No,
Are you kidding me?
He looks like
fails
an
on-
orange panda. Let me ask another question. Is the reason, think about this, I want to see just how honest you lot are, because I know you quite well. Is the reason for Trump's success and being relatively level in the polls, the real polls, actually the uncomfortable truth that millions of Americans are closet hypocrites, going to church on Sunday, yet secretly disliking foreigners, blacks, women, Hispanics, except in their place, of course? They blame them for taking their jobs and everything that is wrong with the world, whilst not actually caring what is going on in the rest of the world,
Wow.
unless it impacts them in their pocket.
Congratulations for coming up with a question and an answer in one single sentence. I have never seen that before. That was freaking even fantastic.
We're all just going to say, yeah.
That was perfect.
Yeah, Jerry, the
Yeah.
answer is yes.
Yeah.
That's
I think
amazing.
it's.
So
I
I've
think
got
it's
one yes.
I think it's
Yes.
slightly
One
more
unanimous
nuanced
yes.
than
Yeses.
that.
Oh, no, we got a nuance.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say that is your answer is conflating the symptom with the disease. I think that without question, the racism, the xenophobia, the sexism exist. But that is a separate question in my mind as to whether or not that's why Trump is holding power right now. I think Trump is a symptom of the fact that we are seeing a changing dynamic. And I don't think that Americans care any less about blacks and foreigners and women than any other country does. I think that we care as much, if not more. And right now we are in this changing dynamic where the face of America is about to change. We are literally at a point where white people aren't gonna be the majority anymore.
Hallelujah.
We are at this place where the typical power institutions aren't going to exist the way that they're going to try to not exist in the ways that they typically have. And what we are seeing in applied behavioral psychology terms is the extinction burst. We are seeing the last throes, what I hope are the last throes of this society's desire to maintain their structure.
Exactly. That's it right there. You're seeing conservatism's last push before they die.
And
I
hopefully the
don't
people
know.
will realize that they're not really losing any power. It's
Oh no,
just-
they are
it-
losing power. There's
Well, they're losing influence, but they'll still have the same ability to start a business, make money, do it as they want to do. They just won't be able
That
to do it as
last one.
comfortably
No.
as they once and
The
easily
moneyed
as
class
they once
is
could do it.
almost as powerful as they were in the Roaring 20s. I mean, the moneyed class is not going down, no matter what the demographics of the country come to.
but that class will change.
And
You think?
No,
I believe it
history
will.
is
Yeah.
It's
repeat
going to
with-
all have the surname Trump before long.
I kind of agree with Jeremy's question answer, though, that the very existence of Trump's candidacy is a glorious anthem of hypocrisy. By the way, great name for a rock band. glorious
rated
anthem
one
of
of the Glorious
hypocrisy.
Hypocrites, yeah.
This guy is kind of a mirror, for our society, and the picture is not
Very
good.
much so. Very much so.
It's not a good reflection of who we are, and
But it's accurate.
it is accurate.
It is accurate, but,
Yeah.
but again, it's not a
And
good. It's not a proud reflection.
It's not
at all.
good. This man is
Why?
basically a
Jeez.
caricature villain in a cartoon that's been drawn by a third grader.
It
it
seems
is.
like he should be a villain on the 1960s campy Batman show. That's what I see.
That's what he tweeted,
I was
right?
going to go Powerpuff Girls, but that's okay.
Kathleen,
That
final
works
word.
too.
Final word from Kathleen on this subject. We'll move on.
I don't have a final word.
Okay, let's. The presidential
sorry.
debate was well over a week ago, 10 days. I want you, starting with Lewis, name one thing you remember from it.
The trumped up trickle down economic theory.
Trumped up, trickle down economic
Success for
theory.
Hillary's branding.
I learned
Tyler.
that Donald Trump, he is not a good listener. Period. I'm serious. There's not a chance in hell I would vote for him. He is not a good listener. He doesn't understand how
Did
to
you
listen.
get any policy from anybody?
He has no listening skills. I saw what I needed to see. He has no listening skills, and why someone would vote for him, scary.
Evo.
I've learned, and I will remember the fact that the revelation that Donald Trump is actually a 13-year-old girl, because.
I resent that on the behalf of all the girls.
13-year-old girls.
13-year-old girls.
Preteen
And some 14-year-old girls.
Tweener girls are very frustrated. All kinds of hormones, all kinds of issues, a lot of catty stuff, and with him, just interrupting every 5 seconds. With him using 300-word vocabulary and then tweeting in the middle of the night about what was
Miss
it?
Universe
A Miss
pageant.
Universe.
Is he out
That
watching
is something
porn?
that.
No,
that's
he's a
something
schoolyard
that,
bully more than a
yeah,
13-year-old
that's something
right?
that-
Yeah,
Major Kurth. What
I
do you
remember all the sniffing. That's,
What?
Yeah.
You remember
Yeah.
the sniffing? Very interesting.
Yeah, he seemed kind of coked up.
He did. He did.
That is very interesting.
But yeah,
Kathleen,
I
what do you
remember the fact that Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand why people would look down on him for not paying income tax. He doesn't seem
That's
to
the most
understand.
unpatriotic thing to do if you're
Sure.
a rich person. The most unpatriotic.
Unless you are candidate for the president of the United
No,
States
be-
for the Republican Party.
No, they
then
can
it's completely
spin.
fine.
Basically, the fact that the spinsters afterwards are able to take a complete failure of epic proportion, a debate failure of epic proportion, and try to spin it to portray this guy as a genius is laughable. Now, what Newt Gingrich said was amazing after the debate. It was stunning.
What'd he say?
He said the finest moment in the debate for both candidates was the fact that Donald Trump didn't say something about Hillary Clinton. So his finest achievement as a debater
But he announced
was
he
something
wasn't
didn't
gonna say it.
He said it was
Yeah.
wonderful that he didn't attack her personal issues with Bill Clinton. It was the most beautiful and just elegant debate performance ever because of this. But this exact
Yeah, you
achievement.
just wait till Sunday.
But Zach, he had the exact same achievement. Zach is the 5-year-old son of my neighbor. He also didn't speak of that and didn't bring it up during the debate. So both Zach, who's 5 years old, and Donald Trump have achieved the same debate performance during the presidential debate.
But he
Well,
did
that-
bring it up.
Interesting.
He
I
did.
kept to myself for the reason I wanted to ask this question. And like Chris, I remembered the sniffing.
really.
But it is interesting from the panel and the audience that no one has mentioned anything Hillary Clinton said. even
Excuse
Kathleen.
me. Hello, black guy over here.
No. You were talking about
trickle
Trump.
down.
Trickle down.
That was her pre-prepared.
I can
thing.
tell you. I can tell you exactly why. Number one, she did nothing that we were surprised at. I mean, she was lock and key exactly what she prepared for.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, looking at our panel, I would argue we were probably more critical of Donald Trump, and we were probably looking for something more
and
from his camp to pick on.
And it's a great testament
Hillary,
to her
Hillary's
skills.
a known quantity.
It's a great testament to her debating skills that we only remember Donald Trump, because that's was her plan.
And so
Bait
when
him
the-
in
Okay,
and
I
have
do
him
like the
talk.
little shoulder shrug. I liked that. Yeah.
And so when the
Oh.
moderator actually asked Mrs. Clinton what did she think, and Mrs. Clinton responded by saying, "I think I'm going to win the election. I think I'm going to be president." Do you remember that?
Well,
No,
that was
she
Saturday
didn't
Night
say
Live.
that.
That was Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, that was Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
And she said, "I'll give my 2
Now,
minutes
if she
to
said
Kim."
that
Okay,
for real, that
so-
would have been awesome.
Question for the panel.
Question.
What
for
do you
the
think
panel.
What do you think is going to have to change for Hillary Clinton specifically? Because all Donald Trump has to do is study, and that his performance will be
he's
improved.
incapable of doing that.
But what does Hillary Clinton have to do in preparation for a town hall style debate against a already irate Donald Trump?
Learn from her husband.
Bait him.
How do you mean?
Bait him.
Be as warm and inviting and
Yes.
comforting
Yes.
as he
Completely.
was in his debate. She,
Completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, she
And
can
bait
be,
him.
and bait him. Yeah, but
provoke
she can be a
him
little
gently.
standoffish, a little coarse, and
Yeah.
Bill just had that ability to
No.
walk up to somebody and
Yeah.
maybe she should wear something low cut and
No,
flash.
no,
that's not
no,
what
You know,
no,
and that would put him
no.
straight off his. You know,
No,
he'd.
no,
he'd-
just-
I mean,
I'm thinking that
he'd just
she will
collapse.
wrap up the entire election if she just walks up to the podium after all the applause dies down and says, "Where my bitches at?"
No.
That will
No.
do it.
She needs to.
awesome.
Yeah, she
Oh, yeah.
wins. She
Wow, that would
wins.
be amazing.
She wins if she is just like you said, kind, smiling, inviting, warm, just gently tickle his prostate.
She has to
and
be-
provoke him. You know, just
Did
provoke
she,
him.
Nicholas?
Honestly, if she really wants to win, if she really wants to win, number one, she should not prepare at all.
Just gently
If
provoke
she really
him.
wants to win,
Yeah.
she should not prepare at all.
Really? Why
Show America
that you're a.
that she is
They-
number one, that she's a natural person, and
Yeah.
she's genuine, and
Yes.
that she
Yep.
also
Yeah,
can think
that's-
on her feet. and
that's a
solve
good
problems.
point. Great
That's
point.
what she should do, is
Yeah.
not prepare at all.
Great point.
Every
would-
one
she
of
would
the
kick
debate
ass.
people so far has started off. They get an initial question, and instead of answering that question, they give their prepared answer, which is irritating.
A little bit.
Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't prepare.
Okay, answer the damn question.
It's
Well,
very, I have to say, and Kathleen's, and I think, much as I love her, is a little naughty because we have both worked in the world where we're advising politicians on
That's
what
true.
to say.
The advice is, don't do that.
In on their major speech, and in front of the media and the world's media and TV and everything else, and the advice we give them is contrary to the advice that we give, when we're doing. The other thing I think that came to me as someone who runs businesses and have done for all my working life is that when Trump said that makes me clever for not paying tax, right? Hundreds of thousands of people, Democrats and Republicans, all agreed with him. Why? Because that's what they do with their accountants. You want to pay the least amount of tax you possibly
Agreed.
can.
yeah, but Trump didn't do that work. His accountants did all the work.
Who
It
cares?
wasn't.
It did make
Yeah,
it, but the
good
point
point.
is, it's not a crime
No,
to
I
not
don't.
pay
It's
tax.
not a crime, but
And-
it's unpatriotic. And I find it very interesting
It's
that
probably
in
a crime.
the,
We just haven't seen the tax
that
returns.
in the next debate, I find it interesting that the best advice to give to the two candidates is to Trump to try really hard not to be himself, and to Hillary to try really hard to be herself. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
One should prepare like it's going out of style. The other should never prepare at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the finance thing might come back to bite Trump. It turns out that the lowest income he had. And they keep saying, oh, he went through some tough times and he came back. Apparently, the lowest income he had in each of those was between 3 and 4 million. So that's really tough.
I hope it
mean,
comes
that's hard
back to
deal
bite
with.
him, but on the other hand, anything that bites Trump is doomed to a painful
True,
death.
Orange venom.
At this point, we normally turn to Dr. Orlando for the word, and for some reason he has decided that he's unable, I think it's due to the election, to do that. I would like to ask him, because he's
Bigly.
very, very
Bigly,
clever
the word
man. He's a
bigly.
very, very
Bigly's
clever
good.
man. And I would like to, because lots of people say he's a very clever man, and he has this huge brain.
Huge.
I want to ask him about a certain word that has been bothering me, homonym.
Homonym.
I'd like to know what a homonym is.
It's the song that a gay man sings.
Oh, you're going to be in trouble for that one. Oh, my God.
That is the
Gay
correct
black
answer.
man. You said a gay black man. Okay. So homonym. Kathleen, what's a homonym?
Well, it's when you don't actually sing the song. You do it under your breath, but you're in the bathroom at the time.
Okay.
Homonym.
So Tyler, what's a homonym?
Whatever they say.
Chris,
I gotta go for the geek answer. Isn't it words that sound the same but mean different things?
words that mean the same.
I don't know.
Sound the same.
Sound the
That
same.
was homophone.
Red and red.
You
know.
Evo, what's a homonym?
I'm an
I
engineer. I'm not an
agree with
English
you.
major.
A homo name.
I have no
Yeah.
idea.
The song that gay
It's
man
actually a
sings.
word which has the same spelling and pronunciation, but mean different things.
Same spelling as well.
Yeah.
I was close.
Like
It doesn't.
there,
A
there.
homonym technically
You've
doesn't have
been
to-
listening to Wednesday Night Undressed,
Like-
courtesy of our host, Tom Conroy, who's a well-known Irishman from
Yay.
down south.
Go Irish.
Thanks to our producer and editor, Eric Holcomb, the engineer, Neil Rasmussen, who's been with us all night. Tom Conroy, as I say, for letting us do this every week. Do come and try his steak fries. You can even have hot ones. And for running probably the coolest proper pub in the region. From me, your host, Jeremy Taylor, thanks for joining in. And don't forget to check into our shows live on KLWN 1320, particularly on Friday and Saturday, streaming mornings at 9 a.m. Central. Or go to the site, Wednesday Night Undressed. Yay!